Alright, okay, finally I'm making the video no one ever made because perhaps no one ever gave a shit. Actually, there might be like one video about this topic, but this is going to be super useful. Essentially what we're going to do is defining a new and custom profile for a specific 3D printer inside Cura. And this could be useful for a variety of reasons. The most obvious one would be if you have a 3D printer that is not listed inside the machine library of Cura, or more precisely, if you have created your own 3D printer, you're obviously not going to have a profile installed inside Cura. So it's a very good idea to set up your own profile and sort of just automate all the process of slicing things. Another reason as to why this is important is this gives you, like the way we're going to do it today in this video, gives you a whole lot of flexibility and options as to choose from when it comes to how you can design your profile as opposed to the things that are already there, which is also a good thing to have. And the last one, which is terribly important, especially for manufacturers, is that if you have a line of printers that you want to sell to people, having your name listed up on Cura's machine library, that's just like free advertisement, right? Because people are gonna hopefully see your name inside that list and be like, okay, I mean, at least they have heard your name at one point, right? Like when they see your ad, they might just click somewhere that, oh, I have seen that name before. And I mean, as I said, this is free and you should definitely take advantage of it. Okay, so the way we're gonna do today's video, this tutorial, is not quite exactly what I imagined it'd be. Like in the beginning, what I thought I could do is to sort of script out all the things I'm going to talk about, and then walk you through it. But then as I got more into it and went deep into all the things, all the settings that you could tweak, I realized the hassle of me editing all those informations into a coherent video is going to be so daunting that it would probably just make me want to procrastinate on making a video. So what I'm going to do instead is just in a sort of chatting manner just walk you through all the things that I could figure out, but be aware that this will probably be a rather long video, because there are a whole lot that we're going to cover. Alright, let's not waste more time. Okay, let's go to the first stop, which is Ultimaker Cura's GitHub. Make sure I'm showing you the right thing. Okay. So inside here, this is the Ultimaker GitHub for Cura, and you have the software itself here. So you want to go to, this is like where you download the thing itself, right? We're not gonna play around with that today. Instead, you want to go to the wiki tab. This is sort of like the development zone in a way, and if you want to add anything or make your own plugins and all that stuff, there are a bunch of documentations as to the step that you have to take for each of these sort of things. So what we're gonna do is to add a new machine, right? And so you have this thing called add a new machine, also definition files. Let's go to add a new machine or a profile to Cura. And obviously I'm not gonna show you all these texts and all that. I'm gonna walk you through it in a manner that I believe would be much more helpful, but I'm just showing it to you so that you know it's there. Like, this is just like a piece of documentation that it is good for getting your start. But it's not like it's not like you have a whole lot of instructions on how to do it. It's just like, okay, it's there, compare this file to that file and you will probably figure that out. So I have done that and I'm just gonna share what I could figure out with you. But anyway, so give this a quick read for more for less information. There's not more information than what I'm going to cover today. But technically, let me switch back here. The thing that you want to do is to create these files called definition files. And these definition files have a bunch of settings inside them that define your printer to Cura. That's why they're called definition. And so you want to define the machine itself, right? And you also want to define the extruders. Okay, so the way you actually create those definition files is something like this. Let me change my screen. Also be aware that we're gonna take existing files as examples and then create our own versions. Obviously, we're not gonna invent the wheel again. So the way you can have access to those definition files or other examples is to go to your Cura installation path, Ultimate Cura 4.8, resources, and then down here you have definitions and extruders. And inside definitions folder, you have a .def or a definition file dedicated to each of the 3D printers that you have down here, right? Like each of these 3D printers have an associated .def file to it. And right now we're just using a random, what is it called? Artillery Genius 3D printer. This is not my 3D printer because I don't have a 3D printer. I only use the one that we have in the university if I promise I don't break it. Okay, so here I have opened a series of .def.json files that I believe could be helpful to understand what is happening inside these files. So let's start with artillery base. Inside that you have name, which is self-explanatory. It says artillery base printer, and this is a human readable name. And the reason I'm mentioning that is this is not quite exactly the same as artillery underline base.def.json. This is a unique ID for this file, and this is just a human readable text. The reason why it matters, I'm gonna tell you why it matters in a moment. Version 2 just probably doesn't matter much. Inherit FDM printer. Okay, so I'm gonna come back to this in a moment. Let me just change its indentation. So you have metadata and also you have overrides. And inside metadata, you wanna define all the things that are about sort of the accessibility and the structure of this file that you're creating. So the first one is visible, which means whether you can or cannot see your specific 3D printer inside the Cura machine library. So right now this is false, right? So it means we cannot see it. Artillery base is not going to be inside our list here. Let's go to artillery. We have Genius and Sidewinder X1, right? We do not have the base one. If I go to artillery Genius, you see in the metadata the visibility is set to true, which is why we could see the artillery Genius. The reason why you can turn on or off this visibility is that it's actually pretty close to why is this inherent thing here. Okay, so let me just tell you the story of how that thing works. Let's say you are a manufacturer who have a line of 10 3D printers, right? And the 3D printers are very close in many respects and different in some minor respects, right? Let's say you're using the same set of hardwares and software for this line of 3D printers that you have, but then one is going to be like 10 millimeter bigger or have, I don't know, 2 extruders, right? I mean, the sort of changes that are not like very fundamental. The way you want to go about it is to define a file that has all the important settings inside it, right? And then create little files for each of those 3D printers that you have to define in each of them the differences that they have, the minor changes, the minor differences that they have with the other 3D printers. So let's say here you design something called base, and you give it all the values that you want to have for your line of 3D printers. And in each of those little files that you design for your specific machines, for example, the Artillery Genius and the Artillery Sidewinder X1, you just tweak and change some of the values that are particular to your 3D printer. So let's say in Artillery Genius, the width is 220, and 250, the width, depth, and height. And here is 300, 300, and 400, right? The way they did it is that they created a base file, right? And all the important values are inside the base file, and the minor changes are defined inside each of these folders, each of these files, right? So you have all these stuff here, and the tiny changes in like the volume or things like that can be defined in these files. Let's go to the next one. So this is what you have for the inherit, right? This artillery machine is sort of speaking a child of this one. This is the parent one, the artillery base, and it has all the qualities that the parent have except for minor differences. And so this parent itself is a child of a bigger thing, that is the FDM 3D printer, or FDM printer, right? This right here. And the FDM printer itself is a file that has complete set of settings that you can define for a 3D printer inside Cura. So if I go to FDM 3D printer, you see how crazy long it is, right? It's mad long. You have all these settings here, and you can, for your specific machine, add or exclude these settings. And so right now this one, the parent one, is the child of the FDM 3D or FDM printer. That's what it means to be inherit. Let me just put this back now that we know what it is. So again, this is not visible because it is only serving as a repository of all the settings that we are able to tweak to our preferences. You see, this is also the case to FDM printer. The visibility is false, but each machine, like Ultimaker S3, the visibility is true, or Artillery Genius, the visibility is true. Okay, let's go forward. The author is just a name. You could probably not here. Let's go to add. Just add something. You see, profile author Ultimaker. Let's go to another one. This is unknown, right? You see something, right? This is where it shows up. Author. Manufacturer artillery. This is the manufacturer. So if you have a line and you have multiple machines, this is sort of the drop-down menu that you created. Artillery. The file format is text and G-code. So for this particular machine, you're gonna work with G-codes. In the previous video that I made, I worked with, what was it called, the Creator Pro, right? And that machine does not work with G-code. That machine works with X3G file, which is a binary sort of set of command that runs the machine, which is only there to sort of help with the sort of rate of data transfer and all that sort of stuff. Doesn't matter. But for this one in particular, we only have G-code because that's what the machine works with. But if you go to the FDM printer, which has all the available options, you have G-code, you have STL, you have binary, you have OBJ, and you have X3G, right? So for your particular 3D printer, you can define what sort of file format is going to work with inside the file format. Okay, let's continue. Where was that? Is it here? Yeah, okay. File format, G-code, first start action. Okay, let me put this forward too. I'm going to come back to this later. This does not matter as much per se, but I'm going to come back to it later. Machine extruder train. So these are particular files about your extruders. So if you have 2, 3, or whatever many extruders that you have, you will define them down here. So it'll start from 0 and goes up to whatever number you have. So it's called artillery base extruder 0. This is important. This is an ID. This is a unique ID for a extruder that you have. After this, we're going to go to a extruder file definition. This is also the parent file for all of them, right? But again, it doesn't matter as much. As long as you are sure that you are matching the name of your created definition for your extruder inside any file that you are referring to it, you should be good to go. But just make sure that this is something consistent in all the files that you have. And this is the name up here, right? Okay, so has materials. So what this thing means is that you are allowing the machine to have access to a list of materials that are available to work with inside Cura, right? So if this thing was, instead of true, false, you wouldn't have been able to choose material from down here, right? The reason you are seeing this drop-down menu is because has material is set to true. Has variance. Variance is referring to the nozzle that you have, right? So let's say you see down here you have your nozzle size and you can change it to different values, right? 2, 4, whatever that could be. And again, if this was false, you wouldn't have had this drop-down menu here for your nozzle size. Machine has quality, right? You can, again, down here, make sure I'm showing you the right thing. Okay, so again, down here you have all the qualities that are available to your machine for a specific material and also a specific nozzle size, right? If this was set to false, you wouldn't have had that option. And so this is where you define the name of that variant. It's called nozzle size. You can just change it to whatever here. Going on, preferred variant name. Okay, so this is referring to a certain file. Each of these preferred settings down here are referring to a file defined somewhere else. And once you have a certain file here, once you add your 3D printer, it'll always start with these until you change them. So I haven't changed anything, right? The nozzle size says 0.4, and you see the nozzle size is 0.4. The quality type is a standard, and you see the quality type is a standard up here. The preferred material is generic PLA, and again you see the generic material is PLA. I hope I'm not flashing you with changing my screen multiple times. I'm just trying to show you. And you can obviously change all of these values to other values. And let me see if it's worth mentioning where you can have access to these. Okay, let me just show you something real quick. So for example, the material, this is right now generic PLA, right? Let's say if you were to change it, you would come down to resources again inside your installation path, and you have your materials here, right? Right now it's just generic PLA. If you were to change it to, I don't know, generic ABS, right? I would just come down here and change it from PLA to ABS. That's it, right? I would just change it. Okay, that's something. You can also do the same thing with the quality, the variant, name and size and all that stuff, right? If it matters to you, just play around with them. And let me just come back to you real quick. Let me show that to you. So if you go to quality, go to artillery, for example, now that we have it. So let's go to artillery standard. You see right here we have a layer height, a certain first layer, and all those stuff, right? If you want to have inside your Cura a certain set of parameters for, let's say, the standard quality, you can just change them from here, right? Like you can change the top and bottom thickness from, right now it's only like 1 layer plus 3 layers. That is like 4 layers in total, right? If you wanted to have like 10 layers, you can change this to like 9. 9, right? Oh, this is 0. Anyway, so you see that's how it works. So if you want to change those stuff, you can definitely do that. Not going to change it. That's for quality. And for variant, if I go to, where is variant? Here. You see you have all those stuff again. So for a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, you have a bunch of settings again. So you see the name is 0.4 nozzle, and it says the value for the nozzle size is 0.4. That's all it's doing, right? But you remember, this is the file that we were referring to, 0.4 nozzle. If I go back to 0.4 nozzle, right? This is the same file. Anyway, let me just close this and continue. Exclude materials. These are all the materials that you're not going to use. This is pretty self-explanatory. And if you have a certain material here, you will not be able to see it when you go to your material manager. And by the way, I have opened that up by clicking on Control K. So yeah, you see, like here we have all these stuff, and a certain material, if a certain material is excluded from our definition files, then we will not be able to see it here. That's all it does. And it's a huge list. Okay, so that's pretty much it. The overrides section is not as poorly documented, I would say, because I mean these are the things that you probably have had some experience with once you were working with your like firmware issues, right? These are just some values that you can fairly easily figure out and then just change, like, I don't know, the speed print, the speed infill, all those stuff, right? Those are pretty easy to find. Okay, that should have been it. Let me just go back here. Let's see if there was anything that I have not mentioned. Quality definition. All these. Oh, okay, platform. Oh, this is actually important. Okay, so here's the thing. So another file that we have not talked about is platform. And essentially what it is this thing right here. You see how we have a platform down here, right? If you create a custom 3D printer, there's not going to be anything, right? It's just going to be the bed itself. Add next. You see, like, there's nothing in here. And this is not very good, because if you import a file and then just look at it from different angles, all of a sudden you're not going to be able to figure out what angle is it that you're looking at, right? You're not going to be able to tell whether this is the front side, this is the front side, right? So having a bit like this will be very helpful, because you can obviously tell this is the front side, this is the back side, if you want to have a certain orientation for your print files. Okay, so the way you would do that is to define or add a mesh to your, let me change my screen, to your definition folder. So each of these build plates that you see, those are just CAD files, or like mesh, not CAD files actually, those are just meshes that you can add to a certain printer. This is how you're going to do it. Okay, so you're going to go to, let me make sure, go to meshes, and down here you have a list of all the things that are there. Let me just open up one. Let me go to artillery, actually. Artillery Genius. You see, this is the one that we were talking about, right? You can just design one or find one on Thingiverse or somewhere, and then just add it to your 3D printer. That's all it is. And then platform offset. Okay, so when you design it, it may or may not be in the same plane as your print bed, so you might have to change the value to sort of align those things together. Let me go to Fusion 360. So you see right here I have my artillery build plate, or like the chassis, whatever that's called, and beneath that, this is my print bed, right? This is not aligning up with this mesh file right here. So what you want to do is to move this thing to the point where it matches your print bed, right? And so that value, the amount that I just moved this thing, is this number right here, and you're just gonna play around with it to figure out what it is actually. What else? Let's go. Okay, this is pretty much the same. Okay, so let me just mention something. You see how there's literally no difference between Artillery Genius and Artillery Sidewinder, right? At least as far as like the design inside Cura. It probably means there's not much difference also in the hardware. So it's just like they have changed the volume or some I don't know, aesthetic changes, and it's pretty much the same thing. As opposed to when you go to Ultimaker, you see actually the parent file is pretty much the smaller one, right, compared to each machine, because each machine is very different from the other one in the same line that they have. So let me see if there's anything here worthy of mention. Author, manufacturer, file format, platform texture. This is just a PNG file, or might work with JPEG or something else. I don't know. Any image that you want to use. Am I showing you the right thing? Okay. Any image that you can use on your build plate. So if I actually go to an Ultimaker, let's see it. What? This doesn't have it? Okay. Unfortunately, this does not have it. Let's go to Ultimaker 3. Oops, this one doesn't have it either. Okay, some of them, I believe you have seen some things here that is just like the... Oh, this is it! What am I talking about? This is it. This is the PNG that you were looking at, right? You can't just add something like this text or image here. That's what platform texture is. Platform offset, we talked about it. Has machine quality, talked about quality, has materials, has variant build plates. Don't worry about this. This has not been released just yet. This is not visible inside the whole thing. Has variants, exclude materials, the same thing. Talked about all of these. And okay, so you see here we have 2 extruders for this machine, so you can just add another one here too, right? And then you have to sort of refer to these 2. You see we have Ultimaker S3 extruder left and right, so these are those 2 files with very minimal differences between them. The most important one being the offset that they have. So the left one is 22 millimeter off from the right one, right? That's like the biggest or most important difference. First start action. Okay, so this is the thing that I think I postponed. Let's just quickly talk about that. So remember, if you install Cura like again, there's gonna be a menu that pops up that asks you to define or choose a 3D printer from that list, right? So these are just those stuff. So the first start action and supported actions, all those sort of stuff. If you want to design a plugin, these are the sort of things that you might want to look for. But we're obviously not going to do that. And again, overrides are just values that you can easily find and then change here. Alright, so that should have been it. It was a rather long tutorial. Well, we covered a whole lot, so I hope this has helped in some ways. we obviously haven't touched as much in, we haven't touched on the override section of the definition files, because I thought the documentation for that section was a bit more available online, and there were like articles about it. So I just found the metadata section a bit, I don't know, there was not much documentation for it. So I thought maybe making this tutorial might help some of you. That's pretty much it. If you found this helpful in any way, let me know in the comments. Do I care about likes? I don't know. Yeah, I don't care about likes. Maybe if you subscribe. No, I don't care. You have to subscribe. I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But let me know if you have any questions. And if not me, there hopefully be help from other community members with your problem. That's it.